Ida for ruining my stepmom's baby shower for her? My dad and stepmom are expecting a baby together, and last weekend was the big event, their baby shower. It's supposed to be this joyful, celebratory milestone in their lives, marking the anticipation of something truly life-changing. For them, it is. My stepmom has been married to my dad since I was 11. Now I'm 15, and their enthusiasm for this new chapter couldn't be more obvious. It radiates from them. They talk about it with an energy that seems to fill every room they're in. The way they light up when they talk about our growing family is like watching people open a present they've been dreaming about for years. But for me, there's a noticeable absence of those feelings. It's not hate, it's not even dislike. It's simply indifference. I'm not excited. I don't feel joy or warmth. And the idea of welcoming this baby into my life feels more like a disruption than a blessing. It's not that I wish bad things upon this unborn child. It's not even that I feel hostile about this situation. I just don't care. This baby will exist in the same house as me, sure, and there will be crying and sleepless nights and bottles left on countertops. But in my mind, it's not my sibling. It's my dad's baby, born to his wife, someone who I've never felt close to. The fact that she's having a child with him doesn't magically transform her into someone I see as my mother. And it doesn't make this baby a sibling in my eyes. To me, it feels like an obligation waiting to be assigned. They've already started talking about it in those terms, how they can't wait to see me with the baby, how I'll be a natural helper, and how good it will be for the baby to have a big sister. There's an unspoken expectation behind their words that fills me with a quiet dread. It's as though they've already decided what role I'm going to play in this narrative without ever asking how I feel about it. In truth, I've already started processing these emotions in the only way I know how, through my journal. It's been my safe haven for years, a place where I can spill every thought without fear of judgment. Therapy helps, too. I go bi-weekly, and my journal is a tool I bring with me sometimes, allowing my therapist to help me untangle the messy web of emotions that I can't voice out loud. Writing has become my therapy between therapy sessions, a place where I can vent, reflect, and let go of things that weigh me down. Lately, the pages have been filled with my thoughts about this new chapter in my dad's life. About how disconnected I feel from the whole situation. About how this baby doesn't feel like mine in any way, and how strange it is to think about my dad having a child with someone who isn't my mom. My mom, she's an unspoken figure in all of this. A ghost who lingers in the corners of our lives. My parents' divorce is a distant memory now, but her absence in this home is palpable. I know my dad has moved on, and I'm not bitter about that. But every step he takes with his wife, my stepmom, feels like it pulls me further from the life I used to know. There's one entry in particular that comes to mind. I wrote about how I don't feel like I'm gaining a sibling at all. The words poured out of me in a single sitting, raw and unfiltered. I described how, to me, this baby represents another loud, messy presence in a house that already feels too full of expectations. I wrote about my fear of being roped into responsibilities I didn't ask for, of losing even more of the little space I have in this family. And I wrote about my stepmom, how, despite her years in my life, there's a wall between us that neither of us has ever been able to climb. I don't hate her, but I also don't love her. She's just there. Like a roommate I didn't choose but have to coexist with. I wonder sometimes if this makes me a bad person. Shouldn't I care more? Shouldn't I feel something when they talk about the baby's tiny hands and first cries? But the truth is, I don't. I feel numb to it all. The excitement, the anticipation, the dreams they have of me being this doting, protective big sister, it all feels like a story someone else wrote for me. And it's not one I want to be part of. But I keep those thoughts locked away in my journal, hidden in a place where no one can find them. Or so I thought. Because, as it turns out, some things don't stay hidden forever. My stepmom read my journal. It's hard to even write those words or think them without feeling the surge of anger and betrayal bubbling up again. She read my journal, something so deeply personal, so sacred to me. I had hidden it, tucked away in the safest corner of my room, convinced it was a place no one would think to look. But she found it. She not only found it, but she also opened it and read the words I'd carefully poured onto the pages. Words that weren't meant for anyone's eyes but my own, and maybe my therapist's during a session. Words that laid bare my doubts, my fears, my frustrations, everything I couldn't say out loud. I didn't find out right away. That's the worst part. I was out with my grandma, completely unaware that she was creeping into my space, invading my privacy. The baby shower happened over the weekend, and at the time, I didn't know why she seemed tense, a little off. Looking back, the signs were all there, the stiff smile she gave me when I walked into the room, the way she avoided eye contact when she asked me to grab more napkins for the guests. But I didn't connect the dots. I figured it was the stress of hosting such a big event. Baby showers are supposed to be joyous occasions, but even I know they can be overwhelming. I never imagined the truth, though, that her mood had been soured by something she'd stolen from me. The baby shower itself was a blur. I wasn't involved in the planning, and honestly, I didn't want to be there. The house was packed with people I barely knew, relatives of hers, family friends I'd only seen once or twice, and co-workers of my dad who acted like they knew me just because they'd met me at some office picnic years ago. Everyone was there to celebrate the baby, and their excitement was almost suffocating. There were pastel balloons tied to every chair, tables covered in floral patterned tablecloths, and a cake with the words "Welcome Baby" written in frosting. The whole thing felt like it was happening in another universe, one I was merely passing through as a stranger. At one point during the party, they started going around with a camera, recording little video messages for the baby. The idea was that someday, when the baby was older, they'd watch these messages and see how loved and anticipated they were before they were even born. Sweet, right? Sure, if you're someone who's excited about this whole thing. For me, it was a nightmare. The thought of sitting in front of a camera and pretending to feel things I didn't, that wasn't something I could do. So, I slipped away. I went to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I stayed there for what felt like forever, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and chatter on the other side of the door. I told myself I'd leave when they were done with the videos. I didn't want to be dragged into something I couldn't fake. Apparently, my absence didn't go unnoticed. My stepmom must have realized I wasn't participating, but no one said anything to me about it during the shower. I thought I'd gotten away with it. I thought I could just stay in the background, let the day pass, and avoid any awkward confrontations. But I was wrong. It all came to a head on Thursday. My stepmom got the videos earlier that weekend, according to her, watched them all on Wednesday. Maybe she was looking for my message, expecting to hear me say something sweet and heartfelt about how excited I was to be a big sister. Instead, she found nothing. I wasn't in any of the recordings. And then there was the journal. That's what tipped everything over the edge. She brought it all up at once, like a dam that had finally burst. She started crying in front of my dad, holding nothing back as she laid out everything she'd been holding in since the weekend. "I don't understand," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought she'd be excited about the baby. I thought she'd love them already, even before they're born. She's been an only child for so long, I thought this would be something she'd want." Her words were like knives, each one sharper than the last. She wasn't just hurt, she was devastated. She couldn't comprehend why I didn't share her enthusiasm, why I didn't feel the way she thought I should. She talked about how she'd dreamed of this, me being a protective big sister, someone who'd love and cherish the baby from the moment they entered our lives. And now, those dreams were shattered. She turned to my dad, looking for validation, for comfort. "It doesn't matter if the baby is from just you or both of you," she said, her voice trembling. "They're still her sibling. Blood doesn't make a difference." And then she brought up the journal. That's when my anger started to boil over. She admitted to reading it, confessed that she'd gone into my room while I was out and violated the one place where I thought I was safe. She referenced specific entries, things I'd written about how I didn't feel like this baby was my sibling, how I didn't have the connection to her that she seemed to think we had. She even mentioned the part where I'd vented about her taking down the photos of my mom from the family room. That hit a nerve. I just want this to feel like my home, too, she said, her voice cracking. I can't live in a house where I'm constantly surrounded by your dead wife's face. It's not fair to me. Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My dad looked torn, caught between defending her and staying neutral. And then she brought up the video messages, how my absence during that part of the shower felt like a slap in the face. She said it broke her heart to know that I couldn't even say a few kind words for my sibling. She asked me why. Why wasn't I excited? Why didn't I care? I could barely contain my anger at that point. The betrayal of her reading my journal, the way she was airing all of this in front of my dad, it was too much. I didn't answer her questions. Instead, I told her what I thought of her actions. You had no right, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You had no right to go into my room, to read something that wasn't meant for you. My journal is private. It's none of your business what I write in there. She started crying harder, but I didn't feel sorry for her. She was the one who had crossed the line. My dad tried to intervene, saying I was taking things too far, but I turned on him, too. You're taking her side over mine, I snapped. You're supposed to be my dad, but you're defending someone who violated my trust. That makes you a bad dad. I stormed off to my room, slamming the door behind me. My phone was already in my hand, and I texted my grandparents, asking if they could take my journal and keep it at their house. I didn't want it in this house anymore, not where she could get her hands on it again. My grandparents didn't hesitate. They came over later that day and took the journal with them. But the damage was done. My stepmom tried to talk to me through the door, saying I'd ruined the baby shower for her. I ignored her. I didn't care. In my eyes, she'd ruined it for herself the moment she decided to invade my privacy. And now, as I sit here writing all of this, I can't help but feel like nothing will ever be the same between us. She crossed a line, and I don't know if I can forgive her for it. The house was heavy with tension, as if every word exchanged had left behind a residue that clung to the walls and air. My stepmom's tear-streaked face, my dad's conflicted expression, and my seething anger had created a storm that couldn't be undone. I replayed her words over and over in my mind, the ones about the photos of my mom, the journal, the baby shower. Each one struck a nerve deeper than the last. She had the audacity to justify taking down the photos of my mom, calling them a reminder of the dead wife, as though that's all my mom had ever been. My mom, who had loved and cared for me, who was part of this house long before my stepmom ever stepped foot in it. My mom, who had been reduced to an uncomfortable memory that didn't fit into her idea of home. What hurt most wasn't just that she took the photos down. It was the way she tried to make me feel guilty for being upset about it, like I was unreasonable for wanting some small piece of my mom to remain visible in the space where I lived. She expected me to just understand, to sympathize with her need to make this house hers, as if that need outweighed everything I'd lost. And then there was the journal. The very thought of her sneaking into my room and flipping through those pages made my stomach churn. It wasn't just a violation of privacy, it was a betrayal. My journal was my sanctuary, the one place where I could be completely honest, where I didn't have to worry about anyone judging or misunderstanding me. And she had taken that from me, rifling through my thoughts and feelings like they were hers to read. Even as I sat in my room, the door firmly shut, I could hear her outside, trying to talk to me, her voice shaky with tears. You ruined the baby shower for me, she said, her words muffled but clear enough to cut through the walls. I just wanted us to feel like a family. I wanted you to be part of this. I didn't answer. What was there to say? Her tears didn't move me, not after what she'd done. If she wanted to feel like a family, maybe she should have started by respecting my boundaries. Maybe she should have thought twice before sneaking into my room and tearing open a part of me that wasn't hers to touch. And maybe she should have realized that families aren't built on forced emotions and manufactured moments, they're built on trust. And she had destroyed mine. When my grandparents arrived, it felt like a lifeline. I handed over my journal with shaking hands, grateful to have it out of the house, out of her reach. My grandparents didn't ask many questions. They didn't need to. The look on my face must have said it all. They just hugged me and told me they'd keep it safe. Watching them leave with it felt like a small victory, a tiny piece of control reclaimed in a situation where I had none. But the storm was far from over. The next day, my dad sat me down, his expression a mix of exhaustion and frustration. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and serious. "About what happened yesterday." I folded my arms and leaned back in my chair, already bracing myself for the lecture I knew was coming. "You need to apologize to her," he said, and just like that, the small spark of hope that he might actually be on my side was snuffed out. "You hurt her feelings, and this isn't how we handle things as a family." A family. He kept using that word like it was supposed to mean something, like it was supposed to fix everything. But it didn't feel like a family to me. Not anymore. "She read my journal," I said, my voice sharp. "She invaded my privacy, and now you want me to apologize? For what?" "For being upset that she crossed a line." "She's upset because you don't care about the baby," he said, his tone growing firmer. "She feels like you're rejecting her and the baby before they even have a chance." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She feels rejected," I repeated, my voice rising. "What about me?" "She took down pictures of my mom like she didn't matter. She went through my private journal." "But sure, let's talk about how she feels." "You're not being fair," he said, his eyes narrowing. "She's trying to make this house a home for all of us. And yes, she made a mistake reading your journal, but you've been shutting her out from the beginning." "Because I don't trust her," I shot back. "And she just proved why. How am I supposed to feel like this is my home when every part of it that reminds me of my mom gets erased? When the one place I thought was safe gets violated? This isn't a home, it's her house. Not mine." His face softened for a moment, but then he shook his head. "I know you miss your mom," he said, his voice quieter now. "I miss her too. But we have to move forward. This baby is coming, and we need to come together as a family. You don't have to love her, but you need to respect her. And part of that means apologizing for the things you said." "I'm not apologizing," I said firmly. "She should be apologizing to me." He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "I'm asking you to be the bigger person here." "The bigger person?" "Of course. Because that's what it always came down to, didn't it? Me bending, me sacrificing, me pretending to feel things I didn't so that everyone else could feel better. But I was done with that. I wasn't going to apologize for being angry about something I had every right to be angry about." When I walked away from that conversation, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the entire house on my shoulders. My dad didn't get it. My stepmom didn't get it. And I was starting to wonder if they ever would. The rest of the day passed in a blur of awkward silences and forced small talk. My stepmom avoided me, but I could feel her presence like a shadow lurking in the corners of the house. Every time I heard her voice or caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye, the anger flared up again, hot and sharp. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, yes, but also sadness. Sadness that this was what my life had become, an endless battle over things that should have been simple. A fight to hold on to pieces of my past while the future loomed over me, demanding that I let go. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know if things would ever get better. But one thing was clear, the trust that had been broken wasn't going to be easily repaired. And I wasn't sure if I even wanted it to be. The tension in the house had become unbearable, thick like a fog that refused to lift. Every glance, every word exchanged seemed to carry the weight of all the things left unsaid, the growing rift that neither my dad nor my stepmom seemed to fully grasp. After our blowout, I thought maybe they'd back off, give me space to process, but it was clear that wasn't going to happen. They wanted an apology, demanded it, really, and they weren't going to stop until I gave in. But the more they pushed, the more resolute I became. I wasn't going to apologize for speaking the truth. It started again at dinner. My dad, clearly exhausted from the ongoing conflict, tried to bring up the subject one more time, his tone calm but firm. "We can't keep living like this," he said, looking at me across the table. "We need to put this behind us and move forward." I didn't look up from my plate. "You mean I need to apologize and pretend everything's fine so you don't have to deal with it anymore?" I said flatly. "That's not what I'm saying," he replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "This isn't just about the baby shower. It's about how we're going to live together as a family. We can't have this constant tension." "We're not a family," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "You keep saying that word like it means something, but it doesn't. Not to me. Not anymore." My stepmom, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "I've tried so hard," she said, her voice trembling. "I've done everything I can to make this a home for all of us. I've tried to include you, to make you feel like part of this family. But you won't even try." I looked at her then, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "You want to talk about trying?" I said, my voice steady but sharp. "How about you try respecting my privacy? How about you try understanding that you can't force me to feel things I don't feel? You don't get to read my journal, erase my mom from the house, and then act like the victim when I don't fall in line with your fantasy." Her face crumpled, and she turned to my dad, as if hoping he would come to her defense. He did, of course. "That's enough," he said, his voice rising slightly. "You don't get to talk to her like that. And she doesn't get to treat me like my feelings don't matter," I shot back. "You keep taking her side, no matter what she does. Do you even care how any of this feels for me?" He sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I care," he said. "But you're making it impossible to fix this. All I'm asking is for you to apologize so we can move forward." "I'm not apologizing," I said, pushing my chair back and standing up. "I'm not going to pretend she didn't betray me just so you two can feel better about yourselves." I walked away before either of them could respond, retreating to my room and locking the door behind me. I sat on my bed, staring at the blank wall, my chest tight with frustration. It felt like no matter what I said, they weren't hearing me. They didn't want to understand, they just wanted me to comply. The next morning, things were eerily quiet. My dad left for work without saying much, and my stepmom stayed in her room, the door closed tight. For a moment, I thought maybe we'd reached some kind of uneasy truce, but I should have known better. That afternoon, my dad called me into the living room. My stepmom was sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy. He gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing, crossing my arms defensively. "We need to talk," he said, his tone heavy with frustration. "This can't go on." "I don't see what else there is to say," I replied. "You want me to apologize, and I'm not going to." "You need to understand how much you've hurt her," he said. "She's done nothing but try to include you, to make you feel like part of this family, and you've shut her out at every turn." "She's the one who shut me out," I said, my voice rising. "She read my journal. She took down the photos of my mom without even talking to me. She didn't care how any of that would make me feel, but now I'm supposed to care about her feelings? That's not fair." My stepmom finally spoke, her voice soft but full of emotion. I made a mistake reading your journal, she said. I shouldn't have done it. But I just wanted to understand you. I wanted to know why you don't want to be part of this family. Because you don't listen, I said, my voice shaking. You don't respect me. You want me to be someone I'm not, and when I don't live up to your expectations, you act like I'm the problem. Her eyes filled with tears, and my dad put a hand on her shoulder, as if to comfort her. This isn't about sides, he said, looking at me. It's about us moving forward as a family. And that starts with you apologizing. I shook my head, tears stinging my own eyes now. I can't, I said. I won't. I'm not going to pretend this is okay. It's not. For a moment, no one said anything. The silence was deafening, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on all of us. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice heavy with disappointment. If you can't apologize, then I don't know how we're supposed to move forward. Maybe we don't, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I turned and walked away, leaving them sitting there in the living room, the distance between us feeling wider than ever. As I closed the door to my room, I realized that this was the new reality. The lines had been drawn, the damage done. Maybe things would never go back to the way they were. Maybe they weren't meant to. And for the first time, I felt a strange sense of relief. Because I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into pretending everything was okay. They could call it stubbornness, defiance, whatever they wanted. But for me, it was something else. It was freedom. It was taking back the control they had tried to take from me. And in that moment, I knew I'd done the right thing even if they never saw it that way.